The room had the sweet scent of baby powder looming throughout it. The silence of the room was disturbed by the ripping of tape from plastic and the giggling of a woman. "My goodness, what a wet baby girl I have," Hannah said as she tickled her charge's tummy, getting another giggle. A knock at the door ceased the noise and movement in the room. "Hannah, are you in there? I wanted to talk to you," Jessica said from outside the door. Hannah looked at Elisa, who was shaking her head vigorously in protest of her saying anything. Hannah smiled at her sister. "I think we should tell her," she whispered. Elisa sucked her pacifier nervously and shook her head in protest again. "Come on in, Jess," Hannah said. The door opened, and the three women just looked at one another in silence for a long while. "You said you wanted to talk to me about something," Hannah said, finally breaking the silence as she proceeded with changing Elisa's diaper. What's going on?" Jessica managed to stammer out after much difficulty. "I'm getting Elisa ready for bed, wanna help?" Hannah asked. "I guess so," Jessica said and made her way slowly to the bed where the changing was occurring. Elisa blushed bright red and attempted to hide behind her stuffed bunny. "Oh, don't be shy, baby, say hello to Jessica." Hannah encouraged her sister as she moved the bunny from her face. "Huo, Jessica," Elisa said through her pacifier. "Hi, Elisa," Jessica said with a confused smile. "What happened to her?" she asked Hannah. "Nothing, she just likes to play baby sometimes," Hannah explained. "Don't you, Elisa?" she cooed to her sister. Elisa only nodded and blushed again. Hannah finished diapering Elisa and sat the young girl up and began dressing her in a light blue onesie with a baby duck embroidered on the breast. Jessica watched as Elisa was adorned with infantile clothing, her blue hair was put into pigtails, and her transformation was complete. Hannah picked her sister up off of the bed and carried her on her hip into the adjoining room. Jessica followed behind the pair and had her eyes go wide as saucers when she saw the room she'd entered. The room looked just like a nursery for an infant, but everything was sized for an adult. Jessica wandered around and took in all of the sights of the room while Hannah lay Elisa down into the large crib to put her to bed. "Good night, my sweet angel," Hannah said as she kissed her hand and pressed the kiss to her sister's forehead gently. Hannah guided Jessica out of the room, turning on a nightlight before closing the door behind them as they left. "I'll bet you have a lot of questions," Hannah said. "I'm just trying to understand why she enjoys that," Jessica said. "When I moved out of our parents' house and here to Paragon, Elisa begged me to take her with me. Our parents were against it but wanted Elisa to be happy, so they agreed, and so did I. Elisa and I got a place together. I got a job at the TerraVolta reactor when we got here and had the job for a little over 4 years before my powers emerged," Hannah explained. Jessica listened intently to Hannah's story until she felt a familiar squishy feeling in the seat of her diaper that signaled to her that she'd messed herself. She hoped that she could get out of the room before Hannah noticed, and tried to go back to listening to the story. "Elisa became very jealous of my powers and a new career as a hero. She started acting up. She'd break things to get my attention and make messes around the house. It got her some attention, but it wasn't what she wanted. One night she wet her bed and came into my room looking so sad and pathetic that my heart melted when I saw her. I helped her get cleaned up and then cuddled with her till she fell asleep again. I guess it made a profound impact on her because she started having more frequent accidents and began regressing more and more often until she had a whole other persona in Elisa. By that time, her own powers had blossomed, and she could finally join me as a hero, but she still enjoyed Elisa time, so we continued it," Hannah said. "I guess that makes sense. She does look adorable, and very happy. She's lucky to have such a loving sister," Jessica said and rose to leave the room. "Don't rush off just because you have poopy pants," Hannah said with a smile. "How dash," Jessica started. "Honey, I'd know a baby with a poopy diaper from a block away. Did you think I wouldn't notice one sitting next to me?" Hannah asked. Jessica blushed and hung her head in shame. I'm not a baby, she mumbled to her chest. Hannah put a hand on Jessica's shoulder and raised her chin up with her other hand. But you could be if you wanted to, Hannah said as she gazed into Jessica's bright blue eyes. Jessica felt funny, like she had butterflies in her stomach. I could change that icky diaper for you if you want, Hannah offered. Jessica felt conflicted. Hannah was being so nice to her. She was offering to clean her poop, for crying out loud. But at the same time, she felt it wrong to say yes. I'm not sure, she finally replied. Well, I'll tell you what, you ever change your mind about getting a helping hand with your diaper changes, you just holler, Hannah said with a smile. Jessica nodded and shuffled slowly out the door. After the door closed behind her, she turned and raised her hand to knock on it and then let it drop. Maybe some other time, she thought, and turned to head to her room. She stopped and turned back to the door. She sighed and knocked softly. Hannah smiled when she heard the soft rapping upon the door, and smiled wider as she ushered Jessica into the room and helped her down onto the bed. I'll have that icky diaper changed in a jiffy, honey, Hannah said as she gathered the necessary supplies together. The butterflies in Jessica's stomach began to square dance, and she started to feel like she'd made the wrong choice. But as she thought about her current predicament, she felt a rubber teat enter her mouth and looked to see a pacifier emerging from between her lips. There's nothing to worry about, honey, just relax, Hannah cooed as she stroked Jessica's blonde hair aside gently to provide a clear view of her pretty face. Jessica smiled and actually began to suck the pacifier as Hannah went to work on her diaper. Lost in her thoughts, Jessica didn't even notice when Hannah had finished and was helping her sit up to put a pink onesie similar to Lisa's on her. All ready, Hannah proclaimed and picked Jessica up and carried her into Lisa's nursery. Jessica squirmed to be let down when she realized what was happening, but got a sharp swat on her thigh from Hannah that made her immediately settle down and go quietly down into the crib next to Lisa. We'll talk more tomorrow, Hannah whispered and gave Jessica the same goodnight kiss she's given Elisa and left the room again. Jessica looked at herself and then at Elisa, and smiled. This does feel kind of good, she thought, and snuggled up to Elisa in the crib and drifted off to sleep. Jessica woke in the morning alone in the crib. She looked around the room and saw no sign of Hannah or Elisa. She found the rails of the crib down and climbed out. She removed the onesie that Hannah had put on her and found a note on the changing table. Jessica, sorry to leave you, but Elisa and I had to go handle a bank robbery in town. We'll talk later tonight. Hannah. Jessica read the note and felt better about waking up alone. She went to her own room and changed her soaked diaper and went to find someone to talk to. She found Knight in his study laboring over some notes. Jessica, how are you holding up? Knight asked without turning from his paperwork. How'd you know it was me? She asked and took a seat next to him at the desk. You're the only hero I know that crinkles when she walks, he said. Jessica blushed. I was wondering if I could talk to you for a bit, she said. Knight turned away from his paperwork. I suppose I should take a break. What can I do for you? He asked. Hannah thought it'd be good for me to get to know all of you a little better, so I was hoping you could share your story with me, she said. Knight nodded. That's a good idea, but I'm not really comfortable sharing my sordid past with people, he said. Then how can you expect to be a good leader if nobody knows you? Jessica asked. Knight said nothing for a long while, and Jessica thought he was just ignoring her. She stood up and started to leave when Knight finally spoke. A little over 200 years ago I was an archaeologist, he said. 200 years ago? Jessica asked in surprise. Knight nodded. I was on a dig in England when we found an ancient tomb. Inside the tomb we found a suit of armor, this suit of armor to be exact, he explained. As we were examining the armor we were attacked by a group of men. I believe now that they were Circle of Thorns mystics. When I awoke I was wearing the armor we'd found and they were performing some kind of ritual on me. They killed my colleagues and used their blood in the ritual, he said. Jessica put her hand to her mouth. That's horrible, what happened? She asked. The ritual bound my soul to the armor. The mystics said that it would grant me eternal life. But with every person I came into contact with, I would feel every pain they'd ever known in their life magnified greatly, and if I removed the armor I would die. They expected me to go insane in a matter of days. And remove the armor. But as I killed each of them in my escape, I knew that I could never give in to the pain. He said. How do you deal with it? Jessica asked as she put her hand to the cold metal of Knight's helmet. The power I have can save lives, and that keeps me fighting. If I lost my power, how many people would suffer because of it? I have to put others first or I'll be destroyed, he said. Jessica nodded in agreement. You are a great leader, Knight, she said. Call me Nate, he said before turning back to his notes. Jessica left him to his work and went to the detention area to check on the prisoners. Jessica entered the cell block and stood next to Severe as she hovered in front of one of the assassin cells. What you doing? Jessica asked the albino telepath. I am scanning this woman's memories to try and find some useful information about Malta, she said. Anything useful? Jessica asked. Not yet, she is very resilient to my probes. Severe said. Sorry, would you maybe wanna take a break and talk to me then? Jessica asked. I know nothing of my past, I have been unable to remember or discover anything about my life in all my years of searching. Severe explained after reading Jessica's thoughts. Oh, well never mind then, Jessica said with a pout as she left Severe to do her interrogation. Jessica sat on the couch watching TV. Thoroughly bored and starting to fall asleep when she got a shock on the bottom of her bare foot. Sitting up quickly, she saw Electro-Cute standing above her with a smile on her face. Wake up, cutie, Electro-Cute said. Why? There's nothing to do but sleep when you can't be a hero. Jessica said with a pout. You could talk to me. I hear you're quite the little fact seeker, the pink-haired hero said with a giggle. Okay. Tell me about yourself. Jessica said as she sat up. Samantha Davis, 24 years old, Sagittarius, the pink-haired hero said. Very informative, can I go to sleep now? Jessica asked as she lay back down. Another jolt of electricity sat Jessica back up. I wasn't done yet, Samantha said. I'm a mutant. I was born with my powers and first became aware of them when I caused a citywide blackout after my boyfriend broke up with me. Samantha said. I met up with Arson during a fight with some clockwork and she invited me to join the team, she said. Riveting, Jessica said and lay back down. Samantha frowned and pounced on Jessica and began tickling her. You're a rude little girl, aren't you? She asked as her fingers danced across Jessica's midriff. Jessica laughed and gasped for air as she kicked her feet fully. Samantha stopped her attack momentarily. Now, who's the best and most beautiful hero in the FPR? She asked. Jessica struggled to catch her breath for a moment and smiled widely as she proclaimed herself as the best and most beautiful hero. To which Samantha answered with more tickling. Tell me who's the best and most beautiful, Samantha said. You are, Jessica managed to shout between giggles and gasps. Samantha stopped her attack again and kissed Jessica full on the lips. And don't you forget it, cutie, she said with a wink and a smile as she got off of Jessica and ran from the room. Jessica just lay on the couch in shock at the realization of what had just happened. You okay? Arson said as she appeared above Jessica from behind the couch. I just met Samantha, she said quietly as if it were a secret. She kissed you, I take it? Arson asked. Jessica looked at her and nodded with a blush. Want me to burn her? Arson asked with a smile. Jessica shook her head. It's fine. What's up? She asked, trying to change the subject. I have a friend that wants to join the team. Knight said I could go and recruit her. Wanna come? Arson asked. Jessica nodded and went to get dressed before the pair left the base.